Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep codes behind Britain's rise. I'm Barbara. This is the podcast where we don't just tell stories, we decode the system behind the story.
Hello, I'm Alex. We break down the power plays, the institutions, and the overlooked turning points, the stuff that actually shaped Britain into a global force.
Today's episode, why Britain's institutional evolution was so unique. And here's the real question. Why is Britain so special?
That's a great question, Barbara. See, most nations, they were just trying things out, like feeling their way through the dark. But Britain's journey wasn't just some lucky guess. It was more like a masterclass in political evolution.
Wait, what? A masterclass? That's a big claim.
Absolutely. Look at our European neighbors. They kept fighting over power, over who was in charge, revolutions, civil wars, governments falling apart over and over again.
Oof, sounds exhausting and pretty bloody.
Exactly. But Britain? We took a different path. We were more like a calm and clever gentleman. We gently tamed royal power. Parliament quietly grew stronger. And step by step, we built the foundations of modern democracy, all with surprisingly little violence.
So, less drama, more progress? That's wild.
Right? This kind of peaceful political change, it's rare. Almost too good to be true. It just makes you wonder, Britain, why were you so different?
Yeah, what was the trick? What's this super clever hack for changing your government?
Well, here's the twist. Britain's success wasn't just a happy accident. It was rooted in a deep institutional logic. There was a hidden structure, a system stitched together from many threads: royal power, feudal landholding, religious authority, local customs, money rules. All these pieces formed a society that could repair itself, adapt, and evolve. That's the real secret behind Britain's quiet transformation.
Okay, now, please buckle up. Okay, Alex, so Britain's special. But where did this unique path actually begin?
Great question, Barbara. To really understand why Britain turned out so differently, we've got to jump way back, all the way to 1066. That's when William the Conqueror landed with his army and swept through England like a whirlwind. And once he took control, he didn't exactly play nice.
The Norman Conquest. Sounds dramatic already.
Oh, it was. And here's the thing. William wasn't just another warlord. He wasn't copying other European monarchs, who usually went with a messy, divide-and-conquer style of feudalism. Nope. William built something much more centralized, a feudal system with a hardwired power core.
Wait, a feudal system with a twist? How was it different?
Well, in theory, get this, every single piece of land in England legally belonged to the king. Under William's system, the great earls and barons weren't actual landowners. They were more like top-level tenants. They held land from the king, and in exchange, they owed him loyalty and military service. Their power didn't come from bloodlines. It came from the king's favor. And because he could take it back at any time, well, let's just say it kept them very obedient.
No, so the king had, like, the ultimate revoke button. That's clever and a little scary.
It was clever, and it was a huge shift from France. Over there, feudalism was super fragmented. The French king, half the time he was just a head of the clan on paper. His lords acted like mini-kings. Some minted their own money, others started private wars. The king barely held the reins.
Sounds like a royal headache.
Absolutely. But in England, the king acted like a national CEO. Because land was centralized, he could actually mobilize resources across the whole country. He had far more real authority than most European monarchs. And that gave England something rare, a system that was unified, stable, and, honestly, shock-resistant. That foundation made all the difference when the big tug-of-war came later, between the crown and parliament.
Okay, Alex. So we've talked about this centralized feudalism. What else made Britain's journey so unique?
Another huge piece, Barbara, was the remarkable stability of the English monarchy. It really became the bedrock of Britain's institutional evolution.
Stability. But kings and queens always seem to be in some kind of drama.
True, but in European history, the English royal bloodline is almost a gold standard for unbroken succession. That consistent line of monarchs helped establish the idea that the monarchy was sacred and untouchable. It gave the whole system a deep layer of legitimacy.
But wait, didn't Charles I get his head chopped off in the 17th century? That sounds like a pretty big interruption.
You're absolutely right, Barbara. The Civil War was a major disruption. England even became a republic for about a decade. But here's the twist. The monarchy bounced back quickly. By the 1660s, it was restored and stronger than ever.
So, no long-term chaos?
Exactly. Contrast that with China, where dynasties turned over like a revolving door. Each time a new emperor took power, it often brought massive upheaval. The institutional system had to be rebuilt from scratch, again and again.
Oof, it sounds exhausting. For everyone. A touch of shared weariness.
It was. Now, why did England manage such long-term stability? First, religion gave the king a divine role. That wrapped his rule in a kind of moral armor.
A divine right to rule. Got it.
Second, there was a well-established bloodline. That gave the monarch a powerful claim to legitimacy. Third, England's legal traditions put constraints on the crown. That meant even royal power followed certain rules.
So not just divine, but also legal. Smart combo.
Exactly. And finally, under the feudal system, the king and nobles developed a sort of negotiated game. Even when there was tension, they stayed within the bounds of the system. That's a big reason why England didn't keep collapsing and restarting. Instead, the same basic framework kept evolving over time.
So it kept the show going, even through the rough patches?
Spot on! Britain avoided the constant resets seen elsewhere. Its monarchy provided a stable political stage, allowing reform and negotiation instead of total breakdown.
Okay now, please buckle up. Sounds like we're heading into even deeper waters. Alex, that's a fascinating look at royal stability. But even with a stable throne, kings usually want more power, right? So what stopped English kings from becoming absolute rulers?
Great question, Barbara. You're spot on. Most monarchs, good or bad, wise or reckless, have one thing in common. They crave more power. It's a ruler's instinct, and English kings were no exception. They wanted tighter central control.
So why didn't that happen here, like Louis XIV in France? Why did our kings give up power and accept Parliament's oversight?
The key lies in our financial system. More specifically, in how Britain's money and power were kept apart. That separation created a built-in check on royal ambition.
Money and power. Always a tricky combo.
Definitely. From the late Middle Ages onward, war became brutally expensive. Armies got bigger, weapons more advanced, and conflicts dragged on. Winning wars and running a kingdom required serious funding, conclusively, highlighting the necessity.
Makes sense. You can't fight a war on an empty wallet.
Exactly. The problem was that English kings didn't have a direct pipeline to tax revenue, Unlike some Eastern empires with huge top-down tax systems, English monarchs relied on Parliament for money.
So Parliament held the purse strings. That's a lot of leverage.
It was huge. If the king wanted funds, he had to call Parliament, present his case, and negotiate. This financial dependency meant he couldn't rule unchecked. It forced him to accept political limits.
A true check on power, then.
Absolutely. The roots go deep. As early as 1215, Magna Carta set this precedent. Clause 12 declared, "No tax or aid shall be imposed in our kingdom unless by the common council of our kingdom." That idea was revised, challenged, and debated, but it stuck. It was the seed of fiscal accountability.
Of fiscal scissors, as you called it in our notes.
Exactly. This system slowly trimmed back the king's endless desires. He learned hard truth. No money meant no wars, no grand court, no personal glory. So he had to compromise. He traded absolute rule for financial survival.
So royal power wasn't about divine right. It was about his bank account?
That's the real twist. In Britain, a king's power wasn't written in stone. It was written in his ledger.
Alex, that was a brilliant explanation of the king's money woes. So this money problem was the big secret?
It's a huge piece, Barbara. If we've talked about the power struggle between the king and Parliament, now let's unlock the real secret behind that fight. Why did Britain's king end up controlled by Parliament? Why didn't France manage the same? And why did China go down a completely different path? The answer, my friends, boils down to one thing: their money systems.
So how a country handles its cash literally shapes its destiny? Fascinating.
Absolutely. Let's start with China centralization, the top-down money machine.
China. Always seems to have a grand plan.
Back in 1066, the same year William landed in England, China's Song dynasty was thriving. They had an advanced system where officials were selected through exams, running the country with the emperor at the top. Taxes flowed straight from local areas up to the central treasury. No need for parliament, no negotiating with nobles, no asking for help.
Sounds incredibly efficient, like a well-oiled machine.
Exactly. By the Ming and Qing dynasties, this system was even more extreme. Every tax payment funneled into the national treasury. Local officials lived on fixed salaries, and the emperor's orders were law. This was China's ultimate central power. Top down, no talking, just doing.
But surely there was a downside to all that control?
Of course. It limited local autonomy and dampened local initiative. Plus, when the central treasury ran low, like in late Ming or mid-Qing, corruption exploded, officials proliferated, and control weakened. Even the strongest central power can run out of steam.
So too much control can actually be a weakness long-term. Got it. What about Britain?
Britain's story was quite different. The English king had no one to use, forced to strike deals over money troubles.
No one to use? Sounds pretty lonely for a king.
It was. Although the king officially owned all land, he lacked a direct system to collect taxes from the people. No royal tax collectors, no money army. He depended on nobles and landowners for support.
So basically he had to rely on favors.
Exactly. The English king was alone and unsupported financially. He had to call Parliament, ask for money, and negotiate. This structural begging is what lifted Parliament to power.
Fascinating. So his weakness became Parliament's strength?
Precisely. Take Charles I. He had big ambitions, but didn't want to ask Parliament for money. He tried to raise funds alone, ignoring Parliament. That led to failure, and his eventual execution. This was more than a personal tragedy.
It was a clash between money and power.
A very expensive lesson, indeed.
The king's power wasn't limited by speeches in Parliament. It was limited by one simple fact. He was broke and couldn't pull the cart alone.
And what about France, the other big player? How did their money system stack up?
France's half-finished centralization, a puffy power machine.
Puffy? Sounds like it looked strong, but wasn't.
Exactly. French kings aimed for absolute power, especially Louis XIV, the Sun King. But their money system wasn't solid. Instead of direct taxes, they used private tax farmers who collected from the public and gave a cut to the king.
So the money bled out before even reaching the king?
Exactly. The system bred corruption and inefficiency. Plus, the French army depended on local nobles for soldiers. So even the absolute monarch had to rely on nobles who had their own power.
So they were stuck in the middle.
Yes, when France needed centralized power, it couldn't fully enforce it. When it needed compromise, it wouldn't. This inflexibility led to the French Revolution.
Wow. So money really does make the world go round. And governments, too.
Absolutely, Barbara. A country's money system shapes much more than its finances. It shapes its political destiny.
Quick look. What are the big takeaways?
China used a top-down tax system, leading to absolute central power. Britain's king couldn't tax directly, forcing cooperation with Parliament, and sparking systemic negotiations. France tried to do both but failed, ending in collapse.
So those are the hidden rules behind their very different paths.
Exactly. That unlucky money system for the king was Britain's secret sauce, the birthplace of modern democracy.
Alex, that was an amazing deep dive into how money systems shaped nations. So what's the big picture here? How do we sum up Britain's unique journey?
Well, Barbara, Britain's journey to change its government wasn't straightforward. It's more like opening a historical mystery box. Inside, a truly unexpected structural accident. A miracle, really.
Structural accident? That sounds deep. What exactly does that mean?
Great question. It doesn't mean pure luck. It means many historical events and conditions came together in a unique way. They created something that looks like chance, but was actually bound to happen.
So it was almost inevitable, but through a unique combination of factors?
Exactly. Britain wasn't like China, which was almost a control freak with a super strong central government. China's system was stable, but cost local freedom and held back people's energy.
And not like France either, right? The loose machine you mentioned?
Right. France's old feudal system was fragmented. The king's power went up and down. They struggled to build lasting central control.
So Britain found a middle ground.
That's it. Britain was like Goldilocks in history. Not too hot, not too cold. The Norman conquest gave the king strong official power and a centralized feudal system, enough to avoid constant civil wars.
And the other side of that balance?
The king, luckily, didn't have a big tax system. He couldn't collect money without parliament and local nobles saying yes. This seemed like a weakness, but forced constant negotiation and sharing of power. A win-win for all.
So his weakness became the system's strength.
Exactly. This tension pushed Britain onto a unique path. No violent revolutions like France, no empire collapses like in the East. Britain chose talks over fights, compromise over chaos. This is how modern constitutional monarchy was born.
Amazing. So this happy accident really changed everything.
It did. This accident of different systems working together was like a gene mutation for politics, a priceless how-to guide for balancing power and building democracy.
So, to wrap it up, what are the God-tier features of Britain's constitutional roadmap?
3 main points. Strong king. A clear, stable royal line. No messy, revolving door of rulers. Power not stuck. The king's money was controlled by Parliament, preventing absolute rule. No big revolutions. Negotiation came before violence, saving Britain from bloody upheaval.
Perfect summary. So much to think about.
Indeed. And that's how a small island built a political system that still fascinates historians today.
You won't want to miss it.
And if you enjoyed today's episode,
Be sure to follow us, leave a review, and share this show with someone who loves history with a twist.
Next time, we're diving into the story of William the Conqueror. Make sure to tune in and listen.
See you next time on the deep codes behind Britain's rise.